نحن حاملين سلاح ولا شيء، بالعكس احنا بصدورنا العاريه امام قوه كبيره من الجيش اللي هي مدرعاتهم واسلحتهم وغازهم وطائراتهم. احنا بالعكس احنا سلميين واعزل السلاح، ما فيش معنا اي شيء.
لا شرعية للمحتل، جيش الإرهاب من أرض العربية، من أرض العربية.
Mr. Speaker, as we speak, bulldozers are flattening the village of al-Amar and destroying its school, which was built with international donor support and which provides education to around 170 Bedouin children from 5 different communities. The village of Abu Nawar is also being destroyed today. The forcible transfer of the villages of al-Amar and Abu Nawar contravenes international humanitarian law. It is a war crime. So what practical action does the UK government propose to hold those responsible for this war crime to account? And isn't it time finally to outlaw commercial dealings by UK firms with illegal settlements in the West Bank?
The Trump administration is reversing the Obama administration's approach towards Israeli settlements. The establishment of Israeli civilian settlements in the West Bank is not, per se, inconsistent with international law.
هم بيت شوف فاتي هم فاتي أخذوا كل شيء حسبي الله ونعم الوكيل كل حياتي أخذوه بيتي أخذوه شوفوا المستوطنين ببيتي وأنا بالشارع حسبي الله عليك يكوني بيتي هم في بيتي
This is Sheik Jarrah. Since Israel occupied East Jerusalem in 1967, Israeli settler organizations have been trying to remove Palestinians from their homes, not just in this neighborhood, but others too.
Police have detained dozens of demonstrators. At the beginning of the year, an Israeli court approved the eviction of 7 Palestinian families in favor of Israeli settlers.
The main issue is that I want to show you right now. There is a house behind me that you can see that Israeli police in here. They're just closing the road, going to home. This house is under the threat of eviction because Israeli settlers believe that this house, this area, belonged to them before 1948.
We are here to protest the forced eviction of residents of Sheik Jarrah because of a law that allows Jewish Israelis to reclaim land they've lost in 1948, but does not allow Palestinian Israeli citizens or Palestinian Jerusalemites the same privilege. These people who are refugees, who were homeowners, are losing their land, but cannot reclaim the land they lost. This seems horribly unjust. It's not a real estate dispute, it's a political matter, and so we're here to protest that.
شايف الشباب والصبايا بتزعل ما في ايدهم شيء دبابات صواريخ كل اللي بدهم اياه جايبين مع الحال انا ولا حدا حامل شيء بايده كله بس ايش انه حملات سلميه عشان يحققوا الهدف ونرجع لبيوتنا هذه ولا لهم شيء في هذا البيت ولا ذره تراب في لهم ولا بفلسطين من حيفا لغايه كل البلاد اللي في فلسطين ما لهم شيء هون فينا ما إلهم هذه فلسطين هاي أرض عربية تاريخية من آلاف السنين بس هاي هجمة استيطانية على كل منطقة في القدس بالذات بالقدس حاصرونا فيها.
فانتوا أنت من أي بيت احكي لنا؟
احنا بيت عبد اللطيف من ضمن ال 28 سكنة اللي احنا مهددين طبعا بالإخلاء يعني. تخيلي أنا بنيت بيتي رتبته طوبة حجر ربيت أولادي من حماي لجوزي لإلي لأولادي كلاتهم 70 سنة وإحنا ساكنين في هذا البيت ويدعوا إنه إلهم بيطلعونا بكل القوة ويوم ما بيجوا بيطلعونا من البيت لما طلعوا دار الغاوي شايفة السكنات العسكرية هاي من راس الشارع لتحت ولا حدا ولا نفس طلعوا الناس من بيوتهم عراة خفاة كانوا الساعة 5 نايمين هذا الجيش الظالم هذا الاحتلال القذر هذا لازم نتخلص منه إسرائيل دولة وهمية يا عالم يا شعب عربي هذه دولة وهمية هذول ظلام هاشمين على شباب وبنات ما في ايدهم سلاح ولا في اي شيء هاي دولة وهمية ما فيها قوتها بالكذب والخداع قوتها بمناصرة الظالمين اللي من امثالها هذه دولة الاحتلال ولن توجد هناك اسرائيل سنتحرر باذن الله تعالى بالسلم بالحرب اي طريقة بدنا نتحرر ان شاء الله تعالى.
كل ما يحاولون فعله هو الدخول والوصول إلى كنيسة القيامة للاحتفال فقط بأعياد دينية. قوات الاحتلال تمنع أحد من الفلسطينيين أو الأجانب من الدخول. نفس المشهد نراه منذ بداية أحداث القدس المحتلة في بداية شهر رمضان المبارك. كل ذلك فقط لمنع الفلسطينيين من المشاركة في وصول الكشافة إلى استقبال النور الذي سيخرج من داخل الكنيسة لينتقل من القدس المحتلة وكنائسها إلى كل الأراضي الفلسطينية واتباعا إلى كل أنحاء العالم. إذا هذا هو المشهد هنا في يوم سبت النور في القدس المحتلة، قمع واعتداء على المصلين ومنعهم من القيام بأبسط حقوقهم الدينية. جمال بوديري، الجزيرة، القدس المحتلة.
The Palestinian armed group Hamas has fired at least 7 rockets into Israel in the past number of hours after its deadline passed for Israeli forces to withdraw from the Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem. Israel has responded with airstrikes, and the Gaza Health Ministry says 9 people have been killed, including 3 children.
Hamas militants say they fired hundreds of rockets towards Tel Aviv in retaliation for Israeli airstrikes, including one that destroyed this here 12-story residential block in the Gaza Strip. Video footage shows the tower housing an office used by Hamas leaders collapsing. Israel deployed more than 80 jets to bomb Gaza and massed tanks on the border as rocket barrages hit Israeli towns. The latest violence has killed dozens of civilians in Gaza and at least 3 Israelis.
Those of you that don't know, there is a massacre that's currently being committed in the Gaza Strip. Last night, the death toll from the strikes last night is 49, and the toll is going to rise by the time you're watching this video. They're still pulling people's bodies out the rubble. About half of the people killed are children. Perhaps one of the worst struck areas was a place called al-Wahda Street. And actually I have a friend who lives there on that street, and her building was struck last night, and I received a call from her. She was sheltering in her basement with her family. And she couldn't leave because if they tried to flee the building, they were scared of Israeli airstrikes. The roads for the ambulances to come were all bombed out, so it was extremely difficult for the ambulances to come through. She's a fellow journalist, by the way. I know her very well. She has a really good heart. She just wants to live her freaking life, and ideally leave Gaza eventually and do something better with her life, but she can't even freaking leave. And this is what's happening, okay? This is what's happening to people. They're killing innocent people. They're bombing at random. There's no Hamas people there. They weren't targeting Hamas. They were targeting everyone in that neighborhood. In al-Wahda Street. They were targeting everyone. That's what they were doing. You imagine she could hear the screams of her neighbors underneath the rubble, some of them blown to pieces, entire families. You imagine you don't get any sleep, bombs dropping constantly, and then you hear the screams of the people you know, that you live next to, underneath the rubble, and you can't do a damn thing to help. You can't do anything. You don't even know where you're gonna go, if your house is gonna be blown to bits. By the way, other houses she had were blown to bits. Everything they know in that house is gone. They have nowhere to go, these people. They have to flee. But to where? That's what's happening in Gaza, and that's why everyone should be standing up with the Palestinians. And don't give me this bullshit about self-defense, because it's not self-defense. This is a war crime that's being committed, and Israel's killing innocent civilians.
This is the Defense Minister, Moshe Yaalon, talking just a couple of weeks ago. Israel is going to hurt Lebanese civilians, to include kids of the family. We went through a very long discussion. We did it then, we did it in the Gaza Strip, we are going to do it in any round of hostilities in the future. That's the Defence Minister. This is the Military Chief of Staff, Benny Gantz. The next round of violence will be worse and see this suffering increase. He headed up the military assaults on Gaza, the last two. This is the Minister for Education in the Netanyahu government. There will never be a peace plan with the Palestinians. I will do everything in my power to make sure they never get a state. He also said, if you catch terrorists, you simply have to kill them. I've killed a lot of Arabs in my life, and there's no problem with that.
Okay. I'm sure there are rockets following as well. Where? Where? Oh my God! So as you can see, Israeli airstrike just hit a building. Till now we don't know what is this building, whether it's for civilians, whether it's empty or not. And this is, as you can see, civilian street where universities and buildings and people are living inside. Our office is just there. That is our office. We're media office, and we're supposed to be secured, but this is what is happening. They're targeting everywhere.
This is the Minister for Justice. Palestinians are all enemy combatants. This also includes the mothers of the martyrs. They should follow their sons. Nothing would be more just. They should go, as should the physical homes in which they raised the snakes. Otherwise, more little snakes will be raised there. That's the Israeli Minister for Justice in the last few months. The Israeli Deputy Minister for Defence. Palestinians are beasts. They are not human. The Minister for Foreign Affairs, CP Hotley, this is the last one. My position is that between the sea and the Jordan River, there needs to be one state only, the State of Israel. There is no place for any agreement of any kind that discusses the concession of Israeli sovereignty over lands conquered in 1967. Now, these are the official statements of several ministers of the current government of Israel. in one case actually advocating genocide of all Palestinians, including children, and calling them snakes.
More than 100 snipers were deployed to the border for the planned demonstrations. One protester was shot in the back as he was running away from the border with a tire in his hand. Another man was shot while praying at the protest. The Israeli army is under increasing international pressure to explain why. In all, more than 700 people were shot, the highest casualty rate in a single day in Gaza since the Israeli war on the Strip 4 years ago. Israel is threatening more action and attacks on what are described as militants whom Israelis blame for the violence. But the people who have erected these tents all along the border include men, women and children of all ages and affiliations, united in a protest that is meant to last for weeks. A protest that has now become a standoff all along the Israeli barrier that encloses the Gaza Strip, with no way out for the Palestinians inside.
This video, filmed on the Israeli-Gaza border, shows one protester in a wheelchair. It's believed the history here is that he lost both his legs several years ago during Israeli airstrikes. Seems he was hit by Israeli gunfire then on Friday and died, while other protesters tried to carry him to safety. Local officials say Israeli soldiers suspected he was wearing a bomb belt.
Now, can I ask you, Taoiseach, do you not think that if we're defining terrorism, that is the language and thinking of terrorists, that it is absolutely unacceptable in civilized politics, in civilized international relations, for the heads of government of a state that we carry on normal relations with and who you met in Paris to advocate those sort of views when we know they have also led on to the deaths of thousands of Palestinians, innocent men, women and children? What have you to say, Taoiseach, about those sort of views being expressed by the Israeli government?
Maimoni, bolepo. וואי, זה סרטון! יש! בן של זונה. איזה סרטון, הנה, תרוצו לפנות אותו. בטח שצילמתי את זה. פגעו לי מישהו בראש. איזה סרטון אגדה. מראה כזה. خويا بن الزانات
And among the dead is Muhammad Ayoub, a 15-year-old child who was shot dead by an Israeli sniper. And that makes him the fourth child to be killed by Israeli forces since the Great March of Return rallies began on March 30th, on Land Day.
How are Palestinians not deterred by these killings? I mean, why do they continue to demonstrate, bringing family members, even though they know that Israeli soldiers will use live ammunition against them?
I think the short answer is because they're human and they want to live a life of dignity. They don't want to live caged up in a ghetto as they have for so many years. They want their right to return home. They want the right just to be treated as human beings, and Israel is denying them that. You have 2 million people caged in the Gaza Strip, a tiny territory which the UN has said will be unlivable by 2020, but is really already unlivable. People cannot go in or out. Last year, according to the World Health Organization, 54 Palestinians died because Israel would not give them permits to leave the Gaza Strip for medical treatment. Most of them were cancer patients and a disproportionate number of them women. So what Palestinians are saying is we're dying anyway, and we choose not to die silently with the silence and complicity of the world.
هذه الرصاصات التي تتوجه إلى صدور بناتنا وأطفالنا ونسائنا وآبائنا وأمهاتنا لا تخيفنا ولن تعيدنا إلى الخلف. رسالتنا لهذا الاحتلال.
To talk to the journalist and director Abby Martin about her documentary film on Gaza. Does Israel continue to plan, do you think, to kill civilians at the Great March of Return? Thousands dead or injured, children is the accusation made in her film. Of course, this in the context, obviously, of 10 million Palestinian refugees now under UN Security Council 194 resolution who have the right of return.
Again, this is self-defense. When you come to marches into the border of Israel, unfortunately, these are not innocent people. Actually, they were selected and sent by Hamas, sometimes under gun threats, and we know that among them were and are embedded sharpshooters and other terrorists who would like to infiltrate.
Okay, well, the protesters, let alone the United Nations itself, completely contradicts everything you've just said.
This is self-defense. When you come to marches into the border of Israel. Unfortunately, these are not innocent people. Actually, they were selected and sent by Hamas, sometimes under gun threats.
I mean, I have to laugh at that, Afshin. I looked at about 12 hours of protest footage. There wasn't one militant. There wasn't one weapon. And you can just look at the UN report, which is incontrovertibly proves extensive documentation of Israeli war crimes. We're talking about over 200 people that were gunned down with Israeli snipers. These snipers are perched up on a hilltop with a wide view of the demonstrations, and they literally just pick people off like it's target practice. Scores of civilians, but not only that, actual protected categories in the Geneva Convention's children, disabled people, medics. The vast majority of the people who were shot and gunned down, standing there wrapped in a Palestinian flag, standing there chanting national slogans, standing there filming the protest, or simply standing there doing nothing at all. This is all documented in the UN report, again, completely incontrovertible. But of course, they will always use this morally bankrupt argument that they're all human shields and all willing agents for Hamas.
I'm sure you're aware the way the media portrays what's happening in Gaza. They use clashes. These are not clashes. You cannot clash against a highly armed Israeli sniper with a stone, with a burning tire. These are not clashes. This is massacre. And our media is lying to us, just as our media is lying to us on Syria. What is happening in Syria is very much linked to what is happening to occupied Palestine. It's the same enemy. It's Zionism and imperialism. They're working hand in bloody hand.
The evidence of numerous blatant war crimes in these regular massacres are there for all to see. Well, let's just take a look at what the United Nations found in their investigation. Facts that cannot be refuted. The UN report released February 28, 2019, documented the extensive human rights violations during the Great March of Return through 2018. Of the 183 fatalities caused by sniper fire investigated by the UN Commission, 171 were clearly murdered, shot in the head or torso. Nearly 8,000 people were wounded by live ammunition. Over that 8-month period, 21 were left permanently paralyzed, and 122 more required limb amputations, including 20 children. In stark contrast, the UN report found 0 fatalities on the Israeli side. Not one Israeli soldier was killed or seriously wounded. 4 claimed scratches from thrown rocks, and could only cite property damage from kites and balloons as reason to continue the ongoing massacre.
Flaming kites and balloons over the border.
Throwing rocks comes with a death sentence. You can see that Hashem Fayez Abu Okel is posing no threat to Israeli lives. He's not armed, and he's not breaking through the border fence. But when the shot rings out, it is he who is shot in the head. Incidents like these that were investigated by the UN are an indictment damning beyond measure.
This morning at 10 a.m., they issued a statement saying that the toll of martyrs is now 197 dead people because of Israel, including 58 children and 34 women and more than 1,400 wounded. If this is not a war, I don't know what is. 1,400 wounded, from regular to very deep, life-changing wounds. This is what we're talking about. This is Israel. This is what they are doing to the people of Gaza with no valid reason. There is never a reason to kill civilians. And this is what the world seems to just turn a blind eye about. This is what baffles me. But again, more information came also this morning saying that they bombed a masjid, a mosque. It's called al-Amar mosques. It's in West Rafah. They also had, they bombed an agricultural land where farmers were actually taking care of their land. They bombed it in Al-Safatawi, that's northern Gaza. We had tens of RPGs and bombs falling on civilian houses in the eastern side of the Gaza Strip. We have, there was a big fire at an industrial facility in northern Gaza, because of the fire. So you're not only killing people, you're bombing their houses, you're now bombing into oblivion their careers as well. So even if they come and survive out of this, they don't have a work to go to. They don't have a source of income to feed their children while being blockaded from the air, the sea, and the land. So this is beyond horrific. But we had also, they bombed the Ansar compound, which is a governmental compound for the government in Gaza. It's in West Gaza. They had, there's a Funko industrial complex as well that was bombed in Salah ad-Din, which is north of Qita' Gaza, of Gaza Strip. And we also had bombs at Jabalia camp, also north of Gaza. All of this that I'm saying happened this morning, not last night, not earlier at dawn, but this morning, meaning 9 a.m. on. We also have in Jabalia houses, residential areas that were bombed. We have more bombing of media offices and bureaus. They are systematically targeting media bureaus to try to silence whatever comes out of Gaza. But they keep forgetting that we are in the age of social media. The new media is what takes over. I didn't have to open my TV to watch the horrific genocide, the incremental genocide against the people of Palestine. I just opened my Twitter account. I didn't even look at Facebook. Twitter was more than enough for me to look at it. So what I fear next is that they might target internet companies that actually would not allow the people of Gaza to show the world the horrific side of the Israeli entity. And we had also, the last is, there was a bombing of a residential area in Abu Raya, which is also a neighborhood in the Jabalia camp in northern Gaza Strip. This is basically what happened. But the last was that the civil defense in northern Gaza said that in the morning, at 8 a.m. in the morning, there were 6 phosphor bombs. So we're talking about not only regular bombs being used on residential areas, also internationally banned bombs used against civilians. So if you don't die from the bombing, you'll die in the aftermath or because of the burn that comes from the chemicals of the phosphor bombs. I don't know if there's a certain military term for that. I don't know it, but I've seen a lot of them in 2006 when they bombed us right here in Beirut. So basically, I have so much more about Khan Yunis, also bombs this morning, about Bir al-Naja in northern Gaza. All of these were bombed only this morning. So go figure what happened since last Monday up until today. It's horrific, Eva. I can't begin to explain. And it's been tough to help. There's no airport to help. There's no port to get to these people. Even the Rafah border crossing with Egypt is still shut down. I'm horrified at the Egyptian government for keeping that border crossing shut at this time. We can't help. We keep watching in real time on social media what's going on. The genocide. I mean, there are kids as young as mine and even younger being pulled out of the rubble with their wearing the new clothes of Eid and with their toys. There's why can someone answer? If I am to lose my kids next, if there's going to be an open war with Lebanon as well, I need someone to answer me. Why will my children die? Why are the children of Gaza dying? Why would an 8-month-old baby lose his family on a beach? And it's a residential area on a beach. He lost his family. He was the sole survivor. He will forever be living in emptiness with his father, the man that lost everyone. He was talking live on TV, telling them, I still have 2 sons left, an 8-year-old and an 8-month-old. And while he was speaking, they told him, your 8-year-old has died. I mean, what kind of a horrific situation more than that can you imagine? The paramedics inside of the hospital in Gaza, one of the paramedics was taking statistics, just counting the number of bodies arriving at the hospital, and he ends up in big surprise finding out 2 of his younger brothers being part of the bodies being delivered to the hospital. Can you even imagine the kind of stress, the trauma, the unbelievable pain these people are going through? And yet you still have people who dare say they don't have the right to defend themselves. They don't have the right to retaliate. This is beyond nonsensical. It gets to a level of being genocidal. You're a genocidal maniac if you say that the Palestinians, with all of that's happening, do not have the right to retaliate.
as a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas is holding for a fourth day. The 11-day Israeli assault on Gaza killed 248 Palestinians, including 66 children there. More than 1,700 people were injured. The UN is estimating at least 6,000 residents of Gaza were left homeless after their homes were bombed by Israel, which has maintained a blockade on Gaza for the past 14 years. Meanwhile, tension remains high across the region. On Sunday, dozens of Jewish settlers backed by Israeli security forces stormed the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound, the third holiest site in Islam. On Friday, Israeli security forces fired stun guns and rubber bullets at Palestinians outside the mosque. Meanwhile, in the East Jerusalem neighborhood of Sheik Jarrah, Israeli authorities are continuing their campaign to forcibly evict Palestinians from their homes so Jewish settlers can move in. We go now to Sheik Jarrah, where we're joined by Mohammed al-Kurd. He's a Palestinian activist and poet who's organizing to save his family's home.
I think the ceasefire means a lot of things. First, it means that the resistance, the Palestinian resistance, be it grassroots or otherwise, has been able to accomplish its own conditions, has been able to withstand a brutal nuclear superpower that is senselessly carpet bombing a strip where 2 million people are besieged. But in its fourth day, we are seeing that the Israeli authorities did not respect the ceasefire conditions. Al-Aqsa Mosque has been invaded more than once. There has been a mass arrest campaign, and Sheik Jarrah is still under an illegal blockade. And colonial violence is still business as usual in occupied Palestine at large. Yesterday, over, I believe, 100 and something Israeli settlers stormed the mosque to incite violence, to provoke Palestinians. And of course, the occupation authorities ransacked the mosque, ransacked the worshippers, and wounded many. We're also already seeing punishment for these advocacy campaigns, for these protests. 1,400 Palestinians who hold Israeli citizenships have already been arrested in the past 2 weeks. Yesterday, the Israeli authorities announced a campaign of what they called law and order, where they will be arresting 500 more Palestinians to, and I quote, even the score. Of course, no Israelis that took part in the lynch mobs were arrested or will be arrested in that campaign. To look at this mathematically, if you're arresting 500 Palestinians, that means you're terrorizing 500 families, 500 streets where you'll be ransacking, raiding people's homes, terrorizing them. This sends a clear message to us Palestinians who have been feeling a sense of national unity across historical Palestine. If you protest colonial violence, you'll be met with more colonial violence. But it is also, this campaign of quote-unquote law and order is also an indication that the Israeli occupation authorities are losing control.
The year was 1948 when Israel bullied its way into a state. Thousands of Palestinians fled their homes to survive. No right for return, no right for a home, no right to fight for the land that they owned. Israel expanded more and more into an apartheid. Where is your humanity? Where is your respect for dignity? Call it conflict as insanity. It's time to change your mind. One day Palestine will be free, so be on the right side of history. You're not anti-Semitic if you stand against war crimes. Don't be brainwashed by the news. Now you can see for yourself the truth. Learn about the story of Palestine.